Could you not be yourself? For 5 minutes! Ah!
In the first Shrek film, Shrek learned to accept himself as he is, and to realize that he is enough. And in this film, it's about Shrek being accepted by non-ogres as part of family. And these themes can be used by cis people to be better to trans people within their own family. And I'm going to say something very controversial here. Come closer. Shrek 2 has the best movie soundtrack of all time. Fight that out in the comments, but be respectful. So the film starts off with Prince Charming being confronted by a trans character. Welcome to Shrek 2. And as I established in the previous video, this is a trans character, and we will be seeing other trans characters in the future. And Fiona and Shrek are on their honeymoon. And even on their honeymoon, they're still being attacked for being an ogres. Because remember, hate doesn't take a vacation. And then Fiona's parents want to meet Shrek because they didn't go to the wedding. I wonder why they weren't invited. This is a common thing that happens for queer people when we get married or have significant events in our life. If you are not accepting to us, you will not be invited. The idea of a chosen family is something a lot of queer people understand. It's a family you choose. Typically, it can be made up of friends if your family isn't accepting of you. But really, everyone has a chosen family. The question is, will your family be good enough to be chosen? If you want your kids to be a part of your life, you have to accept them as they are. And then they go on a road trip to go to far, far away. This is where Fiona's parents live and where Fiona grew up. Before you know, they locked her up in a castle. They did not like what she represented, so they hid her away. That's pretty cruel, isn't it? Hiding someone away because you don't like who they are? It's almost like that's never happened in the real world. Anyway, there's this awkward moment where they see each other for the first time, and then they have dinner, and Shrek really isn't aware of all the customs there, which is a funny commentary on classism. And the Queen herself, played by Julie Andrews, otherwise known as Mary Poppins, says this line.
That there's anything wrong with that, right, Harold?
Which, of course, comes from Seinfeld in the Gay Panic episode.
We're not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
I mean, it's fine if that's who you are.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have many gay friends.
My father's gay.
Look,
So really, this film is infused with a whole bunch of queerness. Who knew Shrek 2 was such a queer film? Queer people. And then the fairy godmother comes by to see Princess Fiona. And then there's Kyle, who is queer-coded, but also sort of portrays a love interest for Fiona. Here's the thing though, why is Kyle there? Did Kyle make a wish to the fairy godmother? Because that's a pretty dark. And then there's this picture of King Charles there. And as established later in the film, Europe exists within this film.
are you from Europe?
So really, does this take place in modern times but not? I don't know. Debate that in the comments. A lot of fairy tales which Shrek is based on have European roots. So it's interesting that, as they establish in the film, this does not take place in Europe, which poses a question of, where does this take place? And the king and the fairy godmother have this conversation, and she says Charming was confronted by a, quote,
Some gender-confused wolf.
which is a bit of a derogatory term for trans people, but since she's a villain, villain's got a villain. And then there's the ugly stepsister at the bar, voiced by Larry King, who is probably transcoded. This is Sally editing the video, and I just want to point out that while I didn't know this at the time of filming, on the Shrek 2 DVD, there is a bonus feature which does confirm Doris is trans. So, transphobes, there are trans characters in Shrek. Deal with it. The whole world tells them they're ugly, but really, does that make them ugly? Does that make them bad people? Does that mean they're worth less? No. Just because the world tells you you're ugly doesn't mean you're worth less. Appearance doesn't mean anything, and not only that, beauty is very subjective. So even if you don't fit the societal expectations of beauty, doesn't mean you're not beautiful. Everyone is beautiful in their own way. Well, except for transphobes. And Shrek is exploring Fiona's bedroom, and he sees all these things from her childhood, which just screams egg and heteronormativity. And think about it this way, there's all these pressures put on you by society, and at a certain point people start believing them. That's where eggs are. Egg is a trans person who doesn't know they're trans yet because society won't let them know they are trans. And then the next day, Shrek and Donkey are out to try and meet the king, but it turns out it was a stake up and he tries to meet Puss in Boots who's trying to kill them. And then Donkey tries to threaten him with the Bob Barker treatment, which, hold on, did Bob Barker exist within this universe? And we know that television exists in this universe, so Bob Barker must exist? And then they pose as union representatives to go see the fairy godmother themselves, and the fairy godmother says, ogres cannot have happy ending, and pulls out a bunch of stories that say that. And I hear this a lot from people in the comments being like, why can't you just make up your own story and stick to that and not use stuff like this? Well, it's because what other stories are there for us? Seriously. You assume that all stories are made for you and not for us. That is oppression, and not allowing us to be in our own stories is also oppression. And when you put us in your stories, you often do stuff like the bury your gays trope, which means that queer people inevitably have to die in the end, which is a horrible, horrible thing when you see it over and over and over again. Seriously, happy endings are rare for queer people in fiction. And I think it's important to remember that. Storytellers live in society. Whatever things go along in society are imprinted in the story themselves. Yes, a storyteller can go against that, but it has to be an active decision to do so. And when there isn't that active decision there, queer people and marginalized people as a whole, we can read whatever we want into these stories because, well, we need to. There isn't enough representation out there for us to do anything else. And then they steal a potion called the Happily Ever After, and through a series of complicated stuff ends up drinking it. But somehow Fiona also gets the effect of it, where they turn into humans. And in the case of Donkey, he becomes a noble steed. And the question I have now is, whatever happened to Dragon? It has been established that Donkey has a romantic connection to Dragon, so are we to assume that Dragon also went through this transformation? And as we see in the post-credits scene, Dragon actually had babies with Donkey. So did Dragon go through this transformation while in labor? Could that possibly have been like? And then it's later revealed that the king made a deal with the fairy godmother so that he could have a happy ending and turn into a human when he was originally a frog. Interesting twist there. That is self-loathing. That is internalized transphobia in essence there, that you hate yourself for what you are, and that's something that needs to be worked on as well. And if you're a cis person trying to be a better ally, keep that in mind. A lot of trans people have internalized transphobia, and it's important to help them feel loved and accepted so that they can overcome that. At the same time, Charming also poses as Shrek being a human, but Fiona sees right through that because she loves Shrek and knows him well. And in the end, the king does the right thing and slips the potion to him instead of her, and he turns into a frog, and then he's on the verge of death. And Shrek and Fiona decide to stay ogres and live their happily ever after, because what's happily ever after to one person is not the same to another. You see, a lot of transphobes get this mixed up. They assume that just because they would be unhappy in a feminine body means that I would too. We're different people. We have different ideas of what makes us happy, and that's okay. And the core message of Shrek 2 is love people for who they are. That is the message, and I hope that's one you take away and apply to trans people. Don't forget to give this video a like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Thank you to my patrons for helping make this video possible. If you enjoyed this video, you can watch What Cis People Can Learn from Shrek, or What Cis People Can Learn from Beauty and the Beast.